Alaska. That was beautiful. Aaron, thank you. Hard to get up and follow that. Well, welcome. Welcome to the Alaska Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you all for coming out today. Got pretty decent weather for it. The roads are finally dry, so thank you all for coming out. And thank you to those watching on YouTube. You're welcome here as well. If you ever happen to be in this area, I invite you to stop by and be a part of one of our services. I promise you that we will do our best to make you feel at home. So welcome. A man by the name of Roy Petrie. He was a Louisiana shrimper and would go out and fish in the Gulf of Mexico. It was this time of year, it was Christmas, it was a good time for catching fish, and he and his cousin who owned a boat were out on a 16-day trip. They had been out for 9 days and they had 7 more days to go, and the fishing had been pretty good. They were doing pretty well with their shrimp, and it was the evening and their plan was to fish all night. And before they started to this all-night fishery, he called his wife back on land with a sat phone, and they chatted, and she wished him well. And when they closed the conversation, she said, and just know that the same angels that went to the shepherds on Christmas are there protecting you now. And he appreciated that, and they concluded their conversation and they began to fish, and they fished all night. And in the morning they were bringing in the last load of the nets. They were emptying the nets and whatnot, and a shackle broke. And this line came streaking across the boat and got him in the head. Now, luckily, it was a glancing blow. It was enough to knock him out, but if it would have hit him direct, it would have killed him. But it glanced off. But what it did is it cut his head, and you know how head cuts can bleed, and he was just gushing blood. His cousin, just the two of them on the boat, got down, and all he had was a towel, and he said, just press this up there and direct pressure, and we'll try and get back to port. But it's a 3-hour trip for us on this to get back. And so he began applying direct pressure, and they started right then, that moment, heading into port. And they'd been going for about an hour or so, and Roy was starting to lose consciousness. He was losing a lot of blood, and so his cousin sent up a prayer, and a few minutes later, they looked up, and there was a white boat sitting in front of them, and it had its white distress flag up. And there it was, dead in the water. And he felt obliged to at least go by and tell him, I'm sorry, I can't stop for you now. My cousin is on board here. He's been hit. He's bleeding profusely. We've got to get him to a surgeon, and we've got to get into port now. I'll radio the Coast Guard and tell them when you are, but I really can't stop any longer. And one of the men on board stepped up, and he held up a little black bag, and he said, no, wait, let me on board. I'm a surgeon. Oh, wait a minute, we're all surgeons. They had been at a conference, and they were taking their recreation day on this deep sea fishing thing, and they were happened to be out there. And so this team of surgeons boarded the shrimp boat, shaved his head, and performed the necessary operation to save Roy's life. Indeed, the Christmas angels were there that day. We have gone through December so far, and we have looked at Christmas as we have it packaged today from different aspects. First, we looked at Christmas from the Gospel according to Luke, and that's the wise men, and that part of this story. Then the next week we looked at the Christmas story is told in Luke, and that's the shepherd and the manger and that side of the story. Today we're going to look at some other traditions that are not necessarily Christian traditions, but are a big part of what we do today in the United States and in many places throughout the world. And we look at this Christmas season. I'll start with one that's, I think we've all heard of the Yule Log. The Yule Log was, and this is separated, is celebrated in a host of different ways in different parts of the world. But the common one that was the Nordic tradition was to bring the Yule tree in. It was carefully selected. It was brought into the house whole and with a great deal of fanfare, and then it was fed into the fireplace a little bit each day. And it burned a little bit of the Yule log each day. And then when it got down to the end, what was saved was used to start the next year's fire for the Yule log. I read that and I wondered, I know how when we used to have live trees, Mrs. Fleming used to complain about the needles. Can you imagine the poor lady cleaning up the needles from that thing after being up there? And then, I don't think there's any statistics available, but how many houses burned down from this tree sticking out of your fireplace? It couldn't have met modern safety codes, I'm sure of that. Other thing that we have today is holly. That's a little prickly, sharp leaves, and the little holly bush is a pain. And they're sharp and everything. Those sharp things represent the crown of thorns that was pressed down on Jesus' head at his crucifixion, and the red berries are with them represent the blood of Jesus and the suffering of Jesus. Now the Druids also embraced the holly plant. They regarded that as signifying fertility and eternal life. Now the Romans decked the halls with boughs of holly during Saturnalia, the fall harvest season. It didn't have anything to do with Christmas. We added that later. We moved things around a lot to make them fit, mostly to songs. Now this next one is good, mistletoe. Everybody knows the mistletoe, the kiss under the mistletoe. You know, a woman can't refuse a kiss under the mistletoe. Well, if she does, it's bad luck. The smooching couple is supposed to pluck a berry off the mistletoe plant, and that keeps the good luck and good fortune for the couple. And when all the berries are gone, the mistletoe plant no longer has the ability to bestow good fortune upon the kissing couple. Now the origin of that name, mistletoe, we go back to the Old English. The missile is dung. And originally it was mistletoe, and tan is a stick. Now, I could never figure out what was romantic about kissing underneath poop on a stick, but that's what the tradition is. I think that was made before somebody. Of course, the big one that we have today is Santa Claus. And there are a host of different stories on Santa Claus. And well, the big key, is there a Santa Claus? And I don't know if probably aren't too many of us remember Virginia and the editorial. She wrote a letter to the editor to the New York Sun. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Originally began with St. Nicholas, and it is rumored, nobody knows for sure, this was around the 3rd century of the Common Era. And a man by the name of Nicholas was a very devout man. He was also a very wealthy man, and he was on a ship going to his home in Turkey, and they hit a terrible storm. They were throwing all the cargo on the ship overboard to keep it from sinking. And finally the captain said, well, this passenger we've got, he's a very devout man. Get this guy Nicholas up here and see if he can do any good. So they brought Nicholas up, and he said a prayer, and sure enough, the seas calmed enough for them to get into port. And everybody lived. And he decided that he was going to go to the cathedral, the Catholic Church, and to thank God for delivering them and nobody dying. And he went to that church, and it just so happened that that night all of the elders and all of the people in the church were having a big meeting to decide who was going to become their new bishop, and they couldn't decide. As well, we're going to get some kind of a sign. And just about then Nicholas walked through the door with his big white beard, and they said, this is it, you're the new bishop. And so he became Saint Nicholas. But that was really just kind of the start of it. The big push for Santa Claus, as we know it today, was in 1822. C. Clement Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, the famous poem that we all know, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And that spread the story of Santa Claus a great deal, but when it really took off was an advertisement from this company called Coca-Cola. And when they advertised the jolly round elf, Santa Claus became part of the American culture, and that has spread to the entire world. So we can draw from all of these different things. We can look from the Christian traditions. We can look from, what could be called pagan, or the different traditions, different belief systems, and also look at the time of year, because it's so closely related with solstice and the shortest days. And what this time of year means to so many people is that this is the time of year that we celebrate the return of the light. And that light is symbolic in itself, and it's symbolic of enlightenment. And what is that enlightenment? It is that thing where we can see the divine in one another. And we can see the divine in all situations, even those that we may first look at as very unpleasant. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But I want to start with a basic premise that is fundamental really to all of our teachings at this center and in the science of mind, and that there is a power in the universe. One magnificent, all-present, all-powerful, all-knowing presence within the universe. That God is all there is. And it doesn't make any difference what name you assign to it. Some people are offended by the word God. Some people prefer spirit. The thing itself, it goes by many, many different names in many, many different cultures. And it doesn't make any difference. But it's that thing that we address and we recognize as being the source of the universe, and therefore the source of us. And this means from the least of us to the greatest of us. That same life runs through all of us. A lady by the name of Marjorie Talcott told a great story when she was young. It was the height of the Great Depression, and she and her husband and her 6-year-old little boy Pete lived together, and they were living, they were making it, but it was really, really hard. And that Christmas there would be no presents. There would be no exchanging of gifts, as they simply had to devote everything that they had to surviving. I hope that we can remember that time. I'm old enough to be first generation of people who lived through the Depression. My kids can't appreciate what the people went through in that period of time. It was difficult. They had nothing to give. So Daddy called the family together and he said, we can't have presents this year. But what we can do is we can get pictures or come up with some representation of what we would like to give each other. If we had all the money in the world, what would we do for each other? And everybody bought into it. And Christmas morning came and their skinny little tree, I have this vision of a little Charlie Brown tree that, but it was all decorated with these beautiful pictures. And there was a big black limousine for Dad and a red speedboat for Dad, and Mom had a diamond bracelet and she had a fur coat. And little Pete, he had a swimming pool and he had a tent, a camping tent. But then there was one other thing on the tree. And as Marjorie took that off, she looked at it and it was drawn, was in crayon, little stick figures, and there was a man and a woman and a child, and they all had their arms around each other, and they were laughing and obviously very, very happy. And there was only one word on the bottom, and that was us. She saved that for many, many years, and she opened it many years later. It took a presentless Christmas to remind Marjorie and her family that the greatest gift we can ever offer is ourselves, our presence. My last point, this ever-brooding presence bears witness to itself through our highest acts and our deepest emotions. I can't tell this story very well, so I'm going to read quite a bit of it. It's told by a lady by the name of Stacy Kramer, and she did a TED Talk in 2014, and it was called The Gift. And she said, imagine for a moment you have a gift, and it's small. It's a little smaller than a golf ball. Now, you can imagine this in a box and a bow and, all prettied up and whatnot. And this gift is amazing. This gift is just incredible. It will bring your family together. You will feel loved and appreciated like never before. You'll reconnect with friends and acquaintances that you haven't heard from in years. Adoration and admiration will overwhelm you. It will recalibrate what's most important in your life. It will redefine your sense of spirituality and faith. You'll expand your vocabulary, meet new people, and you'll have a healthier lifestyle. And get this, at the end you're going to have an 8-week-long vacation of doing absolutely nothing. You will eat countless gourmet meals. Flowers arrive by the truckload. And people's going to say to you, boy, you look good. Have you had some work done? You'll be challenged, inspired, motivated, and humbled. Your life will have a new meaning. Peace, health, serenity, happiness, nirvana. And the price tag? An amazing $55,000. What a bargain for $55,000. Now you're probably wondering, wow, that's pretty amazing. Where do you get that? Is there a waiting list? Is it on Amazon? Prime? Does it come with an apple on it? What is it? Where do I get it? How do I do it? This gift came to Stacy about 5 months before she gave this talk. And it looked about like this when it wasn't wrapped up. It was a rare gem, and I can't pronounce it right. I'm sure Judy will correct me. It is a hemangioblastoma. That was it? Yep. Hemangioblastoma. Brain tumor. It was benign, and she lived, and her prognosis is excellent. So this is what she said at the conclusion of her TED Talk. So the next time you're faced with something that's unexpected, unwanted, and uncertain, consider it just may be a gift. What I would like for you to take away today, final conclusion, is that God is continually and forever expressing itself through and as each of us. What thought could be more liberating to a world gripped in dogma than the simple truth that the presence of Christ, which we've defined the last few weeks, is a principle of consciousness and not a sacred possession of any one religion. And so that Christmas angel is with us all the time. It is with us all year, and it is with every one of us. For that Christmas angel is the divine presence. And so it is with our awareness of that divine presence that is within each and every one of us. I invite my colleagues, practitioners, to join me in just simply holding and knowing the truth for our congregation. Knowing that there is a magnificent power in the universe. A beautiful, magnificent power that is with us, that is for us. It's not against us, that it does not judge us. It is constantly battling with us and for us to navigate this thing called life. And it helps us when we run into those life situations where we have struggles and we doubt ourselves and we doubt the divine. We doubt that divine presence. We can just simply know that behind this appearance of dis-ease, of lack and limitation, of separation from God, separation from one another, that this power is there and that there is indeed a pattern of perfection that is perfect, whether it is in our health, whether it's in our financial affairs, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's how we exist in this world, that divine presence is there with us. It is saving us. Just as assuredly as there can be 6 surgeons in the middle of the water in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico just when you need it, just as assured as that presence is within a little boy who can draw the most beautiful family picture, simply us, or whether we can see the gift in the brain tumor. We just simply know that that divine current is supporting us in every moment. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of the power and the presence of God in our lives. We give thanks for all of the good that we have. And now we can just step back. We can let it go. We can let it be. We can go in comfort. We can go in poise. For we know that God is with us now and always. All praises be unto the one, and so it is.